Clark Lea is changing things for the Vanderbilt Commodores, and it could be an issue. Is it concerning? We'll see.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right. Clark Lea is giving up play calling, and is this a cause for concern? Well, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton, and today we're going to start breaking down the implications of Clark Lea giving up the play calling. The question for me is, will he still be engaged as he was in 2024? Because the last time he gave up play calling, they went 2-10. So there is obviously some concerns there. He's got a more experienced DC and a more experienced staff this go around, so maybe things will be different. But spring practice will get underway, and we're going to see very, very soon, as you're probably listening to it, spring practice is probably happening. Next, the Hoops team will look to recapture Memorial Magic against Arkansas. We're going to break that down. So what do they have to do to keep the streak alive? Getting crowd juiced early on will be a good start. So that'll be a lot of fun. It's a blackout game. It's the late game against Arkansas and John Calipari. Then we're going to wrap up the show. We're going to finish the show by answering the question whether or not we need to hit the panic button for the baseball team after a rough trip out west. Anyway, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, in case you haven't heard, Clark Lea is indeed giving up play calling duties. That is not a joke. That is not a false report. He is, in fact, giving up play calling duties. And after a successful run in 2024, he is now moving back to the role of head coach. And to me, I think this is a good thing and a bad thing, because it's a scenario where I think there's some times where he could have been a head coach last year and he wasn't. But then again, you look at 2023 and he wasn't as engaged with the whole organization. And that's my biggest concern, honestly, because we got to figure out, how much will he be involved? Does he still stay engaged? Now, there's a bunch of ways to do this. And the first way he did it was he thought he was going to be a CEO head coach, kind of oversee everything, just kind of be around, but never really get into anything in particular. That didn't go well. He took back over play calling duties. Went pretty well. Then he said, you know what? I got a guy I can trust. I'm gonna go back to being a CEO. I got to oversee some of the areas of the program. They go into the tank, and I wish they were bad, but they were worse than awful. And he wasn't very engaged. He looked like a cyborg on the sideline, like he didn't have any sort of human emotions whatsoever. Then he takes the defensive coordinator role, and the team flourishes. He's engaged in every aspect of the program. I imagine with the way things are going right now, that's going to continue to be the case. Now, how much will he be involved? I look at it as this. One of the situations that I would probably compare this to is the way Nick Saban was at Alabama and the way Kirby Smart is at Georgia. Not necessarily success, but like how they operate as head coach and defensive guru. And probably the same way a lot of these great defensive minds do. We know that Clark Lea doesn't have an ego, so we know that he is okay with handing over the play calling duties and still being involved at the same time and not having to think he has to have the last word on every single little thing. That's called micromanaging. I don't think he's going to do that, but I do think he's still going to be heavily involved. I think that's going to be one of the major changes. He's probably reflected on this. He's like, okay, the last time I did this didn't go so well. And so he took it as, okay, I'm going to be involved in the play calling. I'm going to be involved in a lot of the things. And he's just going to, I think he's just going to hand over some of those aspects of it and not be as heavily involved. But it's still going to be his scheme. He's still going to, I think, honestly, and you always kind of get concerned because of what happened. It's probably a little bit more PTSD as far as that's concerned than anything else, because if he's going to be as involved as he wants to be. He has a guy that he trusts. This guy was Steve Gregory. He was associate defensive coordinator and did handle some of the defensive coordinating when Clark Lea had to assume the role of head coach. So there is a little bit to that, and I think I don't know that he makes this move if he doesn't feel comfortable with Steve Gregory. So part of me is like, I don't know if you're ready to do this, because you're afraid he might detach because he wants to be involved in other aspects of the program. But then again, the defensive staff is also a lot better. So it's kind of concerning. But again, it's a new adventure. It's kind of a different feel, kind of a different team, kind of a different program at this point. So you know what? I'm concerned, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to give it a chance before I really start to throw daggers at it and really start to punch holes in it, because I think this could be a pretty good thing. I think this could be one of those pipeline, you're building defensive coordinator type scenarios. So it's going to be Steve Gregory, and he's going to be he's going to take over the lead play calling, and Nick Lazinski is going to be co-defensive coordinator. I don't know what role that means. And then of course, they hired Bob Shoup as defensive analyst, so he'll handle a lot of the game planning stuff, the advanced scouting stuff, things on film, and making sure that they're turning over every single stone. So most of what Steve Gregory has done has been in the NFL, with the Dolphins, with the Lions. He also with the Patriots and the Chiefs as well. So it's something that he brings to the table there. Him and Clark Lea go back to 2015. They worked together during Steve Gregory's brief run in college football before he went back to the NFL. And so Clark Lea was working with the linebackers at that point. So he's learned a lot from Steve Gregory. So maybe this is the right move. Maybe this is the right move. Steve Gregory gets back on the field as the lead defensive coordinator. Nick Kaczynski as co-defensive coordinator will probably have some aspects in game planning, things like that. Maybe in charge of developing the red zone calls or certain situational calls that they may have. So let's just say I'm going to be a little bit skeptical, a little bit concerned until it works. Because of what happened the last time Clark Lea decided he wasn't going to call the defense anymore. So, but like I said, the defensive staff is presumably good this time around. So we'll see kind of what it looks like in spring as far as, how advanced the defense is, how much things change between Clark Lea's style and Steve Gregory's style. If anything, it may be that Clark Lea's style came from Steve Gregory and that was a big influence in his coaching career. That might be the case. But we'll see, because spring, you're not going to tell much from day one. But as you go and when you watch the spring game, you'll kind of be able to see how this defense gets after it. And maybe it'll be having a guy full time as defensive coordinator and not splitting time between coordinator and head coach. Maybe you'll see a little bit more aggressive style of play. Maybe you'll see some better pressure packages, some better ideas. Those are certainly question marks coming into spring practice. So this is going to be interesting. But that was certainly something I didn't expect to read. That's for sure. I thought we were firmly entrenched with Clark Lea. I thought things were going really well. And at first thought, the thing that ran through my head initially was, why are we fixing things just to fix things? Why are we, it's not broken. What are we doing? But maybe there was a little bit broken in there. Maybe down the stretch, Clark Lea got a little bit tired, got a little bit exhausted doing both roles. Maybe there were some areas of the team that he did neglect and the development of it because he wasn't the head coach, even though he was the head coach. But he was probably a little bit more preoccupied in defensive coordinating. So who knows? This could be a good move. This could be an issue. This could be one of those, if he's not directly involved in the defensive game planning and defensive play calling, maybe it's one of those things where he just for some reason, can't be fully engaged, fully not, he can't be fully engaged, and he may be fully detached if he's not right there directly responsible for something else. Maybe that's one of his big flaws. I don't know. But like I said, spring practice starts, depending on when you're listening to this, starts today. And I'm excited. There's a bunch of storylines we've been talking about all winter long, but it's finally here. We finally get our first look at who's going to potentially be some wide receivers. We're going to get a good look at who can win their one-on-one battles on the offensive line, who can win their one-on-one battles on the perimeter, wide receivers versus corners. Who's going to get – this is a pretty talented corner group led by Martell Height. He's certainly going to push those guys. Who's going to be the next threat at receiver? We know one, and it's a tight end. But who with the letters WR next to their name is going to be the next big playmaker? Those are questions we're going to see answered. Plus, now the big question is, how much different is the defense going to look under Steve Gregory versus what it looked like under Clark Lea, if there's any difference at all? So we'll see. We'll kind of see how that rolls, and we'll kind of see what we're looking at there. But lots of things. I'm excited about a more competitive spring practice. I'm excited about seeing some of these questions answered, because last spring, you really didn't get a whole lot answered. You really didn't. And it was, it's going to be a lot different. More people are involved. So, but speaking of different, Memorial Gym, it's different now. The Magic is back, and they're calling for a blackout against Arkansas tonight. What's that going to look like? We'll talk about it next. But first, we talk about Supply House. That's right. Whether you can get the supplies that you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast and from coast to coast. So you need help with an order? Supply House offers export support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We certainly appreciate you, especially you everydayers. Shout out to you. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is the place to go. Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job of breaking down the best conference in all of the land. All the stories, all the spring headlines, SEC. He leads the SEC squad. Lots of hoop stories. Baseball has got 13 teams ranked or something like that. I think it's what I last saw. That number I don't know why I'm thinking of that number, but he breaks it all down. Does a phenomenal job. And if you want to watch and see why Stephen Willis leads the most watched Ole Miss podcast in the Ole Miss podcast stratosphere, you should listen to Locked On Ole Miss with Stephen Willis. He'll show you why. He's the most watched for a reason. Does a phenomenal job breaking everything down. Plus, he's everywhere, literally. So, anyway, Arkansas, they come to town. Basketball prepares for that. They're calling for a blackout, and so this one has this one has a different feel. Now that the tournament seeding is all but officially locked up, they have now been classified as in, not just should be in, not on the bubble, not should be in. They've been classified as in, which typically means you're in. Now, until it becomes official on Selection Sunday, it's never really official. But nonetheless, there's a different feel around Vanderbilt basketball, and it's a really good feeling. Memorial Magic is back, right? And so in order to kind of keep this streak alive against Arkansas, if you get off to a fast start and you get this crowd amped early, this student section was looking for a reason to be jacked up. And when you know it, Vandy actually delivered. And so it was as full as it's ever been. It was as full as it's been since probably 2017, maybe. The last time I think Vandy was in the tournament. But this crowd, they've been looking all season long. They've been waiting, chomping at the bit. They've endured second half collapses, first half failing to launch. They've dealt with bad shooting, inconsistent shooting. They've dealt with a lot of things. They've been there. They've been loud. They've been supportive, and the team has responded. So the crowd does matter. And with a team that's still trying to get to know each other, the crowd matters. And so getting off to a fast start, getting them amped early, I think is a different scenario, because before, every time I'd say that, it would kind of matter, but not really, because the fans were like, okay, we're excited, but when's that second half collapse going to come? And it hasn't come in the last few games. And actually, they've been much more clutch than they've ever been. And so, but they need to play to their identity. They need to dictate the tempo. So what does that mean? Force Arkansas to play your game. If you want, you got to dictate where Arkansas needs to play. If you want Arkansas to slug down there in the paint with you, make them do it, but make them do it your way. If you move the ball, you hit threes, you force Arkansas into feeling like they have to score every time they touch the ball. Otherwise, they're going to get behind. And if you can do that, then you put the pressure on them, and that's typically what breaks teams down. And I say this, and I say this again, that's been what's frustrating for other teams that play against Vanderbilt, whether at home or on the road. When they start delivering their haymakers and Vanderbilt doesn't go down, they start to panic a little bit, and that's how Vanderbilt stays into the game. Now, there's other aspects earlier in the year that caused Vanderbilt to lose those games instead of being able to pull them off, but they've since figured out, hey, if we keep our composure, because they would land their haymakers, they get frustrated, they get flustered, and then Vanderbilt would lay haymakers, and then Vanderbilt would be like, okay, we got to try harder. And they start pressing, and they start doing things uncharacteristic of what got them in that game. And all of a sudden they're down 12, and it's only getting worse. So it's definitely concerning when you look at it that way. But this team, to me, is very, this team has been as tough and as gritty and as resilient as you could get, because this, the way that they've been playing, the way that they've been, together and fighting through a lot of this stuff has been amazing. This is, this is a scenario to where, your toughness pays off, and patience is being rewarded, because they've been through a lot. And honestly, they've been through a lot in a short amount of time together, because also, as I've been saying from the jump, they've only been together since June. They went 13-1 through non-conference play. That's absurd. That means you won games early on when you should have been bumbling around. Now, granted, they didn't play an overly tough schedule. Like, they didn't play a murderer's row or anything. But they did play in a few tough games, and they did come out and win those tough games. And they played well together. They showed flashes of what they can be and how they can play. And of course, it is, that should have been telling of, okay, what is this team capable of? And that's what it was. Once they kind of figured out, they got in a slump, and they started, there were some things that were being tested that weren't tested in non-conference in conference play. And they had to figure those things out too. And again, as I say, patience is always rewarded. Mark Byington was the last guy to panic out of anybody associated or anything to do with Vanderbilt basketball or anybody rooting for Vanderbilt basketball. Mark Byington still hasn't panicked, still will never panic. He just keeps going. He just keeps coaching. He just keeps doing his thing. And that's what I appreciate about him because, normally there'd be a lot of people out there hooping, hollering, going crazy on the sideline, making wholesale changes, benching people, cutting people, whatever the case is. You have these coaches that just they don't have any patience. They don't know how to communicate other than screaming at you at the top of their lungs and berating you and all that stuff. Mark Bryant is not like that. He is, if a guy's in a slump, he's going to pull him. He's going to pull him. He's going to talk to him for a minute. He's going to get him calm. He's going to go right back to him. And that's what I like about him. He doesn't, like a lot of coaches, if you go into a slump, you're going to sit on the end of the bench and you're going to grow roots. You might as well just throw your shooting shirt on, get a few Gatorades and enjoy the game because you're not getting in for a while. When you're in a shooting slump at Vandy, hey, you know what? Regroup. We'll throw you back in there. And at times he does hockey substitutions where he's just rolling them in and out. Like every time there's a dead ball, he's got two new guys coming in, and it's like the same pair back and forth and it's situational. Like his strategy and his the chess match that he plays is absolutely insane. So that's going to be kind of what he has to do. But again, control the board, second chance points, kept them in it versus Mizzou. That's kind of the last key here. They've been surprisingly able to do this. They've been able to control the board, especially on the offensive side of the floor, the offensive end. Second chance points has been a huge deal for Vanderbilt in these wins. Second chance points, giving up those second chance points on the defensive end of the floor has been the reason why that they lose, or these teams, they when they're playing significantly better, but they don't have a commanding lead, then it's typically what's going on the boards. And, for Vanderbilt being undersized, I think they've been well coached to be in the right position because, not that I'm comparing anybody to Dennis Rodman, but Dennis Rodman proved that you don't have to be 6'11" to be a great rebounder. He was just barely 6'7", but he understood the science behind basketball and how the ball was going to hit off the rim and where it was going to go, and he'd be in perfect position, and he was tenacious to go with it. And this team seems that, they probably don't have Dennis Rodman level of basketball IQ and rebounding IQ, but they have enough to know how to position themselves, and they're tenacious enough to be able to go get it. And so that's been a difference too. McLaughlin and Jalen Carey have been absolute beasts down there in the paint, despite being undersized. Undersized is just kind of a misnomer at this point, but this can be this. Like I said, this is a fun team to watch. Memorial Magic is back. The Memorial Gym is rocking. The students are jacked up. The fans are packing the place, and there's buzz surrounding Vanderbilt's basketball program. We haven't been able to say that about any Vanderbilt sports team in quite some time. So that's a very good deal, very big deal. So, but speaking of buzz, is it time to hit the panic button for baseball? Rough trip out west. I don't know. We're going to talk about it. Hey, welcome back. We are wrapping up the show here. Locked on Vandy on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow the show at Locked On Vandy, at Coach Burton 36 as well, if you want to follow my personal X account. And this is, prime chance to be able to get all of my link trees with everything. You click one link and you got it. Link trees, a beautiful thing. Not that I'm, shout out, no free shout out here, but this is amazing as far as being able to get everywhere. Get all your links out. You can send one link and it's everything else there once you click it. So check that out. Feedback is always welcome. So we wrap the show by saying this. Here's the golden question. With a rough trip out west, they dominate on Friday, right? 8-3. Brody Johnson hits his first collegiate home run. J.D. Thompson has a phenomenal outing, throwing five innings, 8 strikeouts, 1 hit, all that stuff. Is it time to hit the panic button, though? Because you don't muster many runs. You muster 3 runs Saturday and Sunday combined. You leave a lot of guys on base, lots of strikeouts, just a lot to be desired at the plate. Is it time to hit the panic button? You lose to UConn, which I don't know how to feel about that because I don't know enough about UConn baseball, American Conference baseball. I don't know enough about UConn baseball. I don't even really know enough about USC baseball, but it's a Big Ten team, so things could go either way. But baseball is one of those finicky sports where you just wake up and you just don't have it, right? That's why they play a lot of games, because it's a game of averages. It's a game of longevity. It's a game of mental fortitude. You're gonna slump, man. Like I think people saying it's time to hit the panic button, I think should pump the brakes. Vandy's 9-3 right now. They're early in the season. They're not even in the conference play yet. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button. It's early. Baseball, like I said, is a sport that rewards longevity and perseverance and whatever else, right? Patience, because it's going to come. The power's going to come. I don't know that Vandy's ever going to be a team that mashes the ball out of the yard all the time, but they showed that they can hit some home runs. They're probably not going to lead the conference in home runs. They'll probably near the bottom, but I think with their new approach, they'll get better. They can drive the ball in the gaps. They can get base runners on. They're built like more of a hit the ball in the corners and run, or hit the ball in the alley and run and score guys that way. And they're gonna with Bowker, who had a little bit of a rough go, which it's just a matter of time before a pitcher's going to make a mistake and somebody's going to crush it out of the yard. And then, you let that mistake. The mistake for Bowker was letting the first mistake get him, because they hit another home run real quick. Then he settled in. But, he's going to be very, very good for us. J.D. Thompson is going to be very, very good for us. I don't know about Saturday. What's got a lot of people close to pressing the panic button is, in fact, Saturday. Now, they only gave up 3 runs, which given the fact that they threw 4 guys, they couldn't get anything mustered offensively. They threw 4 pitchers, which leads me to believe that they're just going to go Johnny Holstaff on Saturday, which is concerning because you waste all your bullpen arms trying to slog through a Saturday game instead of trying to find that bona fide starter, or maybe you haven't found that guy yet. I don't know, but that's the part that I think's got people concerned, which is understandable. And if you can't find a Saturday starter, I don't know. Like, either your bullpen's got to be really incredible to be able to get through 2, like pitching 6 guys, 2 innings apiece, and just trying to get through the game and hope that your offense is hot on a Saturday. But in conference play, you're going to be matched up against a dude that day, like a certified pitcher, right? Not a thrower, a guy that can place the ball, a guy that's going to pitch really well. You're going to be matched up against that. And so if you hadn't figured out the guy on the mound for you, and you're trying to go Johnny Bullpen, collective starter, right? That's my new band, Collective Starter. Then you are going to be in trouble. You're just not going to get guys out. They're going to score a lot of runs because you constantly got these bullpen guys who aren't used to throwing extended innings. Maybe you've got a 7th inning guy who's not used to coming in early, But McIlvain, he's not it, unfortunately. He's proving that. He had a little bit better of an outing, but I don't think you can go marginal gains with him. I just don't think you can do that. I think he hasn't gotten to the point. Now, if this were a one-time thing, like if he's been pitching really good and all of a sudden he just has a bad outing, you're never thrilled with that, but like at least you're just like, okay, I see. He just had a bad outing. He's going to make better pitch, but he just hasn't shown that yet. And for whatever reason, he just can't seem to get command of the strike zone. he's erratic. He's walking guys, giving up a lot of runs. People are hitting him hard. So I don't know. He's probably going to get another start, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, because this is, you got to, like, he's going to have to go freaking 7 scoreless with like 10 strikeouts, and he's going to have to earn every start every time he's going to have to earn his next start every time he starts. And, if he isn't out, that leash is about 2 inches long, right? That leash is very short. And if he struggles even the slightest, that might be the last time you see him in the starting rotation on a weekend. So anyway, that's all I got though. But spring ball, exciting. It's here. Memorial Magic. Glad to have that building back. Now let's get Vanderbilt Football Stadium. Let's get First Bank going. Let's reclaim that, and we'll be really good to go. But until then, we'll see you back here next time on Locked On Vandy Podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Arrivederci, baby. See you in the promised land.